I just buried my mom in Ohio. A grueling 5 days of tears, paperwork, and goodbyes. All I wanted was to get back to my little farm in Westfield Estates, lose myself in the dirt, and check on my tomato VY nests. Instead, I pulled up to a nightmare. A shiny 6-foot metal fence circling 2 acres of my crops, padlocked tight. Standing beside it was Karen Walsh, the HOA president, twirling the gate's only key like she'd already won. "Your ugly vegetables are tanking our property values," she sneered, her voice cold as the steel she'd planted on my land. She thought she'd caged me out. She had no idea she'd just locked herself into my trap. 3 years ago, I ditched a 6-figure lawyer gig to grow food, real food, not ornamental shrubs clipped into perfect cubes. This land, with its rich soil and perfect sunlight, was my dream, my fresh start. But to Karen, it was an eyesore. That day, dust swirling around my truck, I stormed toward her, rage bubbling. "This is my land," I shouted before catching myself. 8 years in corporate law taught me the loudest guy rarely wins. Karen just smirked, handed me a paper loaded with HOA jargon about aesthetic compliance and non-conforming agricultural use. "My farm," she said, VY-OLAT the covenant's decorative gardens only rule. I scanned the document, my lawyer brain already ticking. "Karen," I said, calm as I could, "I've read the covenant. Nothing bans vegetables on private property. This fence is illegal. Take it down." Her smile widened, predatory. "Check section 12, paragraph 9. Gardens must be decorative. Your farm's a blight. The gates temporarily submit a remediation plan next month." She sauntered off, heels clicking like a countdown to my crop's doom. That night, I couldn't sleep. My SA, VY, NGS were thin, my mortgage tight, and Dulaw 30,000 worth of lettuce, tomatoes, and zucchini were wilting behind that fence. Restaurants expecting deliveries next week would get nothing. I poured everything into this farm, not as a hobby, but a life rebuilt from scratch. Karen knew it. She'd timed her attack when I was VY-ing, vulnerable, with all my capital tied up in the spring planting. By morning, I made my choice, surrender or fight. For a guy who used to find contract loopholes for Fortune 500 companies, it wasn't really a choice. I started digging. The fence sat 6 inches inside my property line clever, avoiding easement issues. The county confirmed no permit was filed, but HOAs could dodge that for temporary structures. Karen had played that card perfectly, knowing my crops would die before I could challenge it. But she wasn't flawless. The covenant garden clause had never been enforced in 20 years. Neighbors grew carrots and beans without a peep. This reeked of a personal vendetta. At the HOA meeting, I showed up in my old lawyer's suit, the one that still fit despite the farm work muscle. Karen's eyes flickered when she saw Minute, the dirt-stained farmer she'd mocked, but the guy who'd made witnesses sweat in court. She projected photos of my farm, cherry-picked to look messy, and announced a due law $300 monthly image impact fee until I complied. I stood, voice steady, and laid out the selective enforcement, the lack of notice, the fact that my farm fed local restaurants and a food bank. A few heads nodded, but Karen shut me down. The vote to keep the fence passed, with only one abstention. Mike Larson, a retired engineer who lived across from Karen. Mike caught me later, nervous. "She's done this before," he whispered. "Targets anyone who defies her. The Petersons put up solar panels. She hounded them until they sold and left." His warning lit a fire. I researched Karen relentlessly. Public records showed a failed real estate developer, wiped out in 2008, now ruling the HOA like her personal fiefdom. She'd rewritten bylaws, stacked the board with loyalists, and crushed dissent. Mike dropped another bombshell. Old survey maps had discrepancies. The Gates land wasn't HOA property, it was a county parcel, set aside for a never-built road, now up for auction. My heart raced. Karen had built her cage on shaky ground. I called Lisa Morgan, an environmental lawyer I'd met at the farmer's market. She confirmed the auction was my shot, but warned me. Karen's company, Walsh Holdings, was bidding too. My sister, Emily, stepped in, loaning me funds and setting up an LLC to bid anonymously. We also found my land had 1876 water rights, predating HOA rules, GIVY, me agricultural protections Karen couldn't touch. Our plan was bold. Emily would bid up the gate parcel to bleed Karen dry, while I'd quietly snag a 1-acre eastern parcel for new access. Auction day was electric. Karen sat up front, check in hand, VYS to me in the back. Emily played her part. DRIVY in Karen's bids from due law 5,000 to due law 45,000 for a worthless 0.3 acres. Karen's face twisted with each raise, but she won, triumphant. Meanwhile, I secured the eastern parcel for due law 22,000, complete with a stream and water rights that trumped HOA restrictions. Karen thought she'd won, standing by her gate, gloating. She didn't know I'd build a new road through my eastern land, gravel crunching under a contractor's bulldozer. When she showed up, screaming about HOA approval, I handed her my deed and permits. Her threats fizzled. The land was mine, outside her reach. Then she slipped. My cameras caught her at 2 a.m., bolt cutters in hand, failing to break my lock. I sent the footage to the board. No commentary. Just see who represents you. Cracks formed. Board members skipped meetings, rattled by her recklessness. Then she rammed my gate with her SUV, hinges buckling. Deputies found her car with matching dents. She was charged with trespassing and vandalism. Her mugshot plastered across the local paper. The HOA sued, claiming I'd blocked their garden path, demanding due law 5,000 per household for a legal fund. Karen painted me as the VY lane, even using a struggling family, the Thompsons, as pawns, say my fight would force them to sell their car. At the meeting, I stood. If Karen can target me today, she'll come for your flowers or your kids' toys tomorrow. This isn't a community, it's a dictatorship. The vote passed, but barely, with abstentions signaling doubt. Lisa and I struck gold in discovery. The decorative gardens rule was never counter-registered, making it toothless. Worse, Karen's brother's company, Peak Landscaping, had siphoned due law 200,000 in inflated contracts. I offered a deal, garden path access for all but Karen, if they dropped the suit. Her board, smelling scandal, wavered. Karen snapped. At an emergency meeting, she screamed at dissenters, then stormed out. That night, she sent her brother's crew to bulldoze my fence. By noon, Lisa had an injunction, and by 3 p.m., Karen faced lawsuits for harassment and property damage. The newspaper's expose on her financial schemes was the final blow. Homeowners demanded an audit, and the board ousted her, naming Mike interim president. Karen, defiant, sold her house at a loss and fled to an HOA-free condo. The new covenant embraced my farm, even marketing it as a green feature. Property values soared as Westfield became a farm-to-table haven. I hosted a harvest festival, neighbors picking strawberries, kids learning about zucchini. Jessica Thompson, the mom Karen had weaponized, shook my hand. She used my family to scare people. You fought for us all. I planted a sign. Free land for those who sow seeds. The old padlock hangs in my farm stand. Not a trophy, but a reminder. Freedom isn't given. It's earned. And sometimes, the best revenge is opening the gate after you own the land.